And these actually come from a program called Couple Communication at the University of Minnesota. That's where it was developed. You can look at couplecommunication.com, I think is their website, and look up more information about their program. There's also another good book called, or a book called Fighting for Your Marriage, that was developed by some other researchers, not the University of Minnesota ones, but the ones at the University of Denver, that is also very well researched. But this couple communication program that the steps come from out of your book has enjoyed very positive research results over many, many years, and it's very safe to say that these steps work. As a matter of fact, if you use these steps, I think this whole class will be very worthwhile, whatever tuition you had to pay for it. And so here's the deal. So if I'm right, just send me a check for the amount difference. You know, if you paid $100 per credit hour and this ended up being worth $150, just send me a check for that. No, I'm just kidding. But I really do think this is valuable and important information that will help people's relationships and marriages. So the first two steps are not in your book, and you're going to be asked to do an assignment this week to use these steps with a real person with a real problem. So make sure that you understand them well and go back and read through your book to further understand the steps. But let me give you some brief ideas about how to use them. First, we have to focus on what the issue is. A lot of times couples start arguing about one issue and it jumps into another issue and goes into another issue, and pretty soon we don't even know where we started. That's why the first step really needs to be to identify what issue we're talking about and what issues we're not talking about. So if my wife and I are not in agreement on how we do household chores, we sit down and we say, hey, you know, we need to talk about this issue here of how we divvy up the chores, specifically the dishes and the laundry. And that's what we're going to focus on. The second part is to contract to work through the issue. The contract is simply saying what it is we're going to talk about and when. Oftentimes we say to our spouse, oh, hey, I want to talk about this. We need to talk about it now. Well, what if now is not a good time for them? So this would be simply saying, hey, you know, I really think we need to nail down a solution on this whole deal of problem solving with the chores and the household tasks. Is this a good time to talk about it? And if they say, no, you know, right now I'm really busy and worried about this other stuff, how about we talk about it tonight after the kids go to bed? Great, that's fine. Then we know we're sitting down and talking about it at a good time. So the steps your book talks about, number one, we're going to clarify the issue completely. This is where each person should take turns using their iMessages and their reflective listening, and each person really share what are their thoughts and feelings about this issue. Just in general, what's gone on in the past, how do you feel about it, what have you seen, what have you heard, what are your opinions about how it's gone and what the issues are. And your book, I like how it talks about sitting down by yourself first and thinking through the issues and really thinking, you know, what are the underlying issues here for me? Is this about who takes out the trash, or is it that I'm kind of just feeling neglected or overworked, or what's the underlying issue here for me? So after you do that, the next step that a lot of times people leave out is, okay, if we're going to come up with a solution here, what do we want for the solution? What do I want me to get out of this solution? Well, I want to be able to come up with a solution where I don't feel so overwhelmed. I don't know what that solution might be. We're going to come up with that later on, but I need to know what I want to get out of it. And for you, hon, I'd really like for you to get out of it that, you know, you don't feel like you're overwhelmed, or that you have to do all the chores, or that you have to give up your jogging time just because I want you to do more chores. And for us as a couple, I really want us to be able to come together on this and for this to build our relationship rather than tear us down. That would be it. Each person, again, is going to listen and to understand what does the other person really want to get out of it. This is where we could almost call it compromise, but this is where you need to say, do I really care if my spouse takes out the trash, or if I take out the trash, or do I really care about not being overwhelmed? What I really care about is not being overwhelmed, regardless of who ends up taking the trash out. So don't get too rigid here and say, well, what I want out of this is for you to take out the trash every week. No, what we really want to say is, what bottom line do I want? I want not to feel overwhelmed. That leaves it a little more open for the next step, which is where we brainstorm ideas. Now that we know what each person wants, those are our goals. Can we get everybody what they want? That would be wonderful. And that's what we should shoot for. And so in this step, we want to brainstorm. And the 2 rules of brainstorming are, number 1, you say whatever you think. Good ideas, bad ideas, crazy ideas, you say it all, whatever comes to your mind. And the second most important step of brainstorming, or the rule, is don't judge. Because as soon as your spouse says, well, I think we ought to just hire a maid, and you say, well, that's a stupid idea, we can't afford a maid, that's probably going to be the end of their brainstorming and their ideas. And this is so important that you have a good brainstorming session, because that's where you're going to get your best ideas. And oftentimes my wife and I find that our solution ends up being usually a combination of the ideas. We usually don't pick just one person's idea that they had to resolve the problem. We usually choose a combination that comes up with a synthesis or synergy solution that's better than any one of the solutions that either of us had come up with. That's why brainstorming is so powerful. The next step is solidifying the agreement. Great. We come up with our plan. We choose our plan. We're thinking win-win. Like, how can we get everything that you wanted, everything that I wanted out of this deal? And 9 times out of 10, you'll be very surprised that you can. A lot of people talk about compromise, but compromise means oftentimes I don't get what I want and you don't get what you want. Compromise is good and it's important, but hey, why compromise if we can come up with a solution that gives you everything that you really want, not to be overwhelmed, and gives me everything that I really want? The last step here is to try the plan, and then we review it and renegotiate if we need to. We try it out, see if it works, and that's it. Let me just tell you one quick success story about my wife and I trying this out. We actually took a class as part of my doctoral training in marriage and family therapy of this couple communication program. And then we learned how to do it, and then we kind of forgot about it a little bit. And we were having this issue that we had differences on opinions on credit cards. And I don't even remember what all the issues were, but I do remember that any time we sat down to talk about it, it didn't take more than 5 minutes for one or both of us to get so frustrated that we couldn't even carry on the conversation past then. And the issue never got resolved. And one day, my wife, being much smarter than I am, and more beautiful too, I might add, she says, hey, why don't we pull out those steps that we learned in that couple communication class? And I, being the marriage counselor, thought, I should have thought of that. So we did. 45 minutes later, we got done, and we had a solution for the first time in probably over a year, 6 months to a year of arguing about this. We had a solution. And since then, it's not been a big deal. We've been able to resolve it and move on. That's the power of these steps. They're not natural, and that's the benefit. If we do it, what comes naturally, that's where we tear each other apart and we get defensive and frustrated and critical. These steps help us avoid the bad patterns that might otherwise come about. If you want more information on this, you can read that Fighting for Your Marriage book, or you can read also some of the books by John Gottman, such as the 7 Habits to Make Marriage Work, and or you can look at smartmarriages.com and look and see if there's a training in one of these programs in your area. This program is called Couple Communication. The other one is called PREP, P-R-E-P, which stands for Prevention and Relationship Enhancement Program. And there's a lot of good resources there, but those are the 2 programs in terms of couple communication that have had the most research support.